few, I mean, to my mind, actually no other situation in the world today where a country actually runs this kind of, scale of terrorism against the neighborhood.
Minister, what's your reading of the state of play with China? We've seen a massive military build-up, which seems to continue infrastructure projects, bringing in air assets, pumping up air defenses. We've tried to cope up as best as possible, given the asymmetry in our economic and military capabilities. However, things aren't quite as bad as they were immediately after Galwan, but they haven't completely come back to normal either. As External Affairs Minister, how do you read what's happening on the other side of the Himalayas?
Well, the way I read it is that we, from the 1980s, I think developed a workable, decent relationship with the Chinese, predicated on the fact that there would be peace and tranquility in the border areas. This was not just an assumption or a conversation, it was written into agreements between us. Now, come 2020, we saw the Chinese side disregard those agreements for reasons which are still not clear to us, because I've met my counterpart a number of times, and others in our system have engaged each other. But I've still not heard a credible explanation as to why they chose to bring that size of forces to that sector of our border. Now, if peace and tranquility is disturbed and attempts are being made to change the LAC, the status quo, unilaterally, and large forces are brought to the border in contravention of written agreements, then obviously the relationship will be impacted. Now, if we need to get back to a normal relationship, which they say that they want, and which both of us believe is in our mutual interest, then I think they need to stick with the agreements and do the right things. Now, we've had, yes, some progress. We've had progress in Pangong So, we've had progress in a few other areas. But I think the larger problem remains, which is that there is a very sizable Chinese force very close, close if not at the LAC.
Dr. Jaishankar, it's not so much the achievements of Modi administration in international affairs, but it's the difficulties in relations that finds a lot of space in domestic politics. Now, we've seen Rahul Gandhi walk out of the Parliamentary Committee on Foreign Relations when it comes to discussions on China, demanding that there needs to be discussion. There has been a lot of talk from the opposition on whether if the government has been transparent enough. Just wanted to know whether if there is a sense in the government in briefing the opposition of the difficulties that the government faces or the difficulties that the government now faces with China, and whether if the government indeed has been transparent with the country and with the opposition.
Look, I've been in the government a long time, a really long time, and over multiple governments. I think, governments, obviously, when it comes to national security situations, all governments, when it comes to national security situations, say enough so that, people outside the government have a fair sense of what is happening, and expect that people outside there will be supportive of larger national objectives and goals. Now, if sometimes it doesn't happen because people are busy politicking, I just have to say it's a very sorry state of affairs. But I don't think, just look back at the last year and a half. We know so much about what is happening out there. So nobody can say, oh, I have not been told enough, or there's been lack of briefing. I mean, I don't know the standing committee episode that you are referring to, but I can tell you, for example, as a foreign minister, we have a consultative committee, and this issue has been discussed. So it's been discussed in Parliament. Raksha Mantri has given repeated statements. So I think, somewhere we need a sense of responsibility and maturity when it comes to national security matters. It should not be a subject for posturing.
Minister, staying with China, from the political part of it, just going back to the LAC for a moment, there have, as you no doubt know, there have been multiple rounds of talks, over a dozen rounds of talks between the corps commanders. You've met your counterpart a few times. There's a question of the return to status quo of April 2020, and there is also a sense that the Chinese are there in large numbers. They're talking to us, but there's no sign of any really big disengagement. Have things changed on the ground, sir? Is there a realization that this situation is becoming a kind of semi-permanent, foreseeable future kind of situation where we have to live with the Chinese in large numbers at our doorstep?
Have things changed on the ground with reference to April 2020?
Yes.
Well, obviously. Things have changed enormously on the ground. They brought forces up, so we have counter-deployed. So now if you ask me how long will that continue, it will continue as long as they deploy. So look, let me be very, very clear about one thing. Yes, they have done things, as I said, which were in contravention of agreements, etc. But there's been no lack of resolve or firmness or effectiveness in terms of what we have to do to protect our national security. So we've also had additional deployments, and they've stayed through one winter. We are getting close to another winter. So I have every confidence that the Indian Armed Forces will do what they have to do to protect this country. And I expect everybody else who's reasonably patriotic to have the same confidence.
Dr. Jaishankar, having one hostile neighbor is bad enough. At this moment, we have the PLA amassed along the LAC. We have the Pakistani army, which continues its nefarious designs along the line of control and in Jammu and Kashmir. And now we have in Afghanistan, China and Pakistan working in concert. Would you say in some senses this is a worst case strategic situation playing itself out? And how are you recalibrating India's strategy given the fact that you've got two hostile neighbors working so closely in tandem?
Rahul, we're coming back to this point, which is you pose the problem as though I have a choice in the matter. I don't. I have what I have. So if I've had a pretty much a continuously difficult situation on my western border. Now, if along with that I have an aggravation on my northern border, but I will do what I have to do to meet it. I can't say, well, I'm overstretched or I don't like it or, this is a very complex challenge. I'm presented with a clear and present danger, and I have to respond to that. And I would say, very frankly, we have, the armed forces have done that, have done a very good job in responding to it.
The one thing I'm sure many people sitting here at the India Today conclave and watching on TV or on our digital assets would really appreciate is the manner in which not just that we stood up to the PLA, but we stood up to neo-imperialism of kind being shown by the United Kingdom on the issue of the Desi vaccine. The same vaccine, when they're administering to their citizens to others, they think is good enough for them to be allowed to travel the world over, and when India administers the Covishield, somehow they had a problem, and that's really a sign of a new assertive India saying, okay, you don't let me in, I don't let you in, now you're quarantined as well. Well done, Dr. Jaishankar.
Well, thank you. I just think it's a sensible India. What else would you do? To me, this was a problem which shouldn't have arisen in the first place. So, we did what we had to do, and I'm glad we've sorted out this situation. And I had a very, very cordial talk with my counterpart this afternoon. I hope both of us agreed that we should find ways by which travel happens more freely and naturally and without quarantine between our countries. So.